Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the #1 producer in late night and tonight's birthday boy. It's Dave Willabowski. Dave, happy birthday.
Hi, guys. Yeah, it's a couple days ago. I'm trying to forget about it, but yeah, I had another birthday. How you doing?
Why does it sound like you have an echo? Why do I hear so many Daves? Too. And why do you have a cuck chair as well? This is all.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
That stuff.
Yeah. And you're making me nervous because like I see the mouse moving over here around buttons it shouldn't be on.
Yeah.
I'm just this is just anxiety inducing right now. I would hate to yell at you on your birthday. That would be so sad. No, okay. I wouldn't. Okay. Well, we'll just everybody gets to be a little retarded on their birthday. I think we discussed that. So it's okay. We're actually celebrating a lot of occasions, over the last few days. Of course, there's St. Patrick's Day. Did you guys do anything? You guys do St. Patrick's Day? I know you have some Irish in the house. You do some.
Oh yeah, we used to go bar hop and get breakfast and stuff like that, but not for the past couple of years. And just kind of stay home and do stuff here.
Do you guys decorate for holidays other than like Christmas? Like, are y'all the kind of people that like, oh no, we have our choice, doormats and flags for occasions too. Y'all not those kind of people?
No, just Christmas.
Because I go around a lot of neighborhoods in this area where there's like that one out of every 10 homes where I swear, like, I don't need to look at my calendar. I know what time. I could just look like, oh, it's St. Patrick's Day. Oh, it's Valentine's. Oh, it's Easter. They decorate.
They have a flag
all the time for everything. Yeah, they got the doormats. They got the little flag on like the little stands.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the other people that like they want to compete with the Joneses, and so like Halloween gets here and they put out a jack-o'-lantern. That's a big deal for them, mind you. And then 6 months later, there's a rotting pumpkin still on their porch. Yes, I have gotten
better at that.
We also had for people, if you know, we were celebrating Gary Plauche Day. Gary Plauche, of course, who was Father of the Year in 1984, reducing the pedophile population by 1. But of course, we would not share a video like that on this program because this is a family program, and we do not depict scenes of violence on this show. So, do we have a picture of Gary Plauche?
Oh yeah, I got one right here.
Oh, Jesus.
There you go. I mean, it's good.
Let me help you. So you don't ever do that anymore. Also, in other news this week, for people that are looking to make a quick buck or even a quick 50 million bucks, it's a bad week for the popular coffee chain Starbucks. You can actually see in the video right here, Starbucks with shades of the old McDonald's. It wasn't coffee, it was actually tea. They're handing over hot tea to a man in the drive-thru with a cup that apparently was had a faulty top, if you will. And he spilled the hot tea into his lap, suffering third-degree burns. And now I know I've heard some people say third-degree burns, like that's not that bad, right? But for the gentleman in the audience, please remember, it was third-degree burns through his nuts. It's just,
don't want.
Yeah. No. But even with that, people have said, man, that a $50 million settlement seems a bit high for third-degree burns. What do you think, Chris Tucker?
$50 million?
Those people are so fun. I love them. And of course, before we get too carried away, we're going to be talking about a lot of heavier stuff with tonight's guest, who's great, Pete Quinones, the Pete Quinones Show. But before we get there, man, social media has been on fire today, talking about the release of the JFK files. Over 80,000 documents released pertaining to the JFK assassination and the investigations thereafter. But I think what most people have been talking about, because 80,000 pages is a lot to go through, is so many documents that seem to indicate a smoking gun between the CIA, the assassination, and Israel.
What?
I know. Far be it for me to say that Mossad got with the CIA and assassinated JFK because they didn't want Israel to have nukes and he wanted to reorganize the CIA. But of course, now that the cat is out of the bag, I'm sure it's time for the United States to finally cut ties with Israel and remove all Israeli influence from the U.S. government. What do you say, Donald Trump?
All talk, no action. Sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen.
Yeah, thought we had him. It kind of brings up the interesting question of, do all of our politicians and presidents ever since then, are they all Israel firsters, or were they not necessarily Israel firsters, but then they read the files and realized, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do that. You think about that? Because like, don't the presidents get to see all the classified stuff? So like, maybe you went up there thinking, oh no, I'm not gonna bow down to Israel, and then you read those files and go, but then again,
we got some points there.
yeah, they definitely got some points. Hey Dave.
Yes, Alan.
What time is it?
Oh, it's time for meme of the week. It's early.
You're early.
Oh.
To dine, and you say you belong to me. So lose my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together.
Has there ever been a more on point meme of the week than that one?
Nailed it.
That's really on. What's funny is that we didn't necessarily have that planned in advance. That's just how it kind of came together. Like, wow, how did they do this? Let's answer some viewer mail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shut up, Dave.
Yeah.
I know you don't actually want to answer the viewer mail.
Oh, sure.
Clay Davis writes, Dear Alan and Dave, back in the day, can we even start? All right. Back in the day, did you ever see the Harlem Globetrotters play? Dave, did you ever see the Harlem Globetrotters play live?
I never actually saw them play, but I remember thinking they were super cool. I don't know if all kids thought that, but it's just like, wow, look at these guys. Like, how can anybody be that good at basketball? Why aren't they in the NBA? Look at them.
You know, I actually did. My dad took me and my brother to see the Harlem Globetrotters play the Washington Generals one time. Yeah. And I remember seeing it in person and thinking, I thought it was fake. Like, I was trying to see if there was like wires in the air around, because I was like, there's just no way. Like, how are they doing this stuff? How are they hitting these shots? How are they doing these things? And when I got older, I finally realized it wasn't that what they were doing was fake. It's that's how bad the Washington Generals are.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Like, imagine what Steph Curry and LeBron James could do if they were playing like us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they'd look like magic too.
Yeah. Like, they wouldn't run plays. They would just be like, hey guys, watch this, you know, like that's all right. Aaron Kittner writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what would the title of your autobiography be? Oh, Dave, what is the story of your life?
Oh, I guess it'd be like you call it could have been worse.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I think a lot. Like, oh, this ain't too bad. It could be worse.
Okay, I feel that.
I like it.
Okay, all right. I couldn't decide at first if that was like a passively negative title or a passively positive title. But you've sold me. Now I realize you mean it in good faith.
Yeah, it keeps me positive.
Yeah,
I'm thankful.
Yeah. I think. I mean, mine would just have to be. It is what it is. You just have to be.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. Wait. It's just the way she goes. All right. All right, Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Dave, if you walked into a bar, would you be cool or would you order everybody around?
Oh,
now you found the button.
I always thought that for Andrew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with you at your age and health, I should be looking for another producer anyway. I don't think I would walk into a bar. I'm not a big drinker. What was the last time you walked into a bar?
It's been a while.
Yeah. I honestly can't remember. It's been years, literally, I think. Yeah.
I might have, like, for food, not like a bar.
Yeah. I mean, like, no, like a bar, like to drink.
It's been a couple years.
Yeah. Gary Dykstra writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is the best concert you've ever been to? Ooh. Best concert I've ever been to, Lost Lonely Boys. Man, what a freaking show. Those three dudes are out of this world, and like they play everything. Like, you realize how ridiculously talented of a trio they are. Lost Lonely Boys. What about you, Dave?
I'm torn between the Beastie Boys. I saw them in Pittsburgh, and they sound just like they sound. They're fun.
Yeah,
or,
awful. Yeah.
Lollapalooza '97, because there was a lot of different people at that one. I got to see Tool and Limp Bizkit and Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg puts on a pretty good show. Devo, that was fun.
Wow, it's an interesting list.
Yeah, isn't it?
I feel like that's going away. I feel like it's going away where you could just go to a random city and they're just having a random series of shows down by the river, and it's just, like you look back in hindsight and you're like, wow, there's like 40 huge acts that just happened to be. I feel like that's dying. I don't know if that's so much a thing anymore. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like you get that many big names. You'll get like one or two at these little festivals.
Like I remember when I was a teenager, Nashville used to have this thing called River Stages, and River Stages was amazing. And they quit doing it, and some dispute with the city, because of course it would be.
Yeah,
it's like the only non-country music thing that they had, and it goes away. But man, and this was back when Nashville was like still a cool city. I tell all these people that are moving to Tennessee now, they're like, "Oh, Nashville, I love it." I'm like, Nashville's been dead for 20 years. Y'all missed it. Actually, y'all killed it. It was you did it. Nashville was pretty cool 25 years ago. And at the last time I went to River Stages, it was like a smorgasbord. There was like Joe Crocker was there, which is really random. Erykah Badu, No Doubt, before what's her face went and
before
Gwen Stefani. Yeah. Of course, John Mayer was there. That's why I was there, and I was like, man, why are all these people appearing in this show with John Mayer of all people? But that was when he was young. He was a baby. Nobody knew who he was. He was opening for other people. There was like 8 or 10 people that like at the time were pretty big, and I was like, how did they even schedule all these acts? I have no idea. And finally tonight, Mary Lynn Wilimowski writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, if someone just turned 46, what can they do for fun while maintaining their physical safety at this advanced age?" It's advanced age.
Wow, that was hurtful.
Dave, if you were at the advanced age of 46, how would you maintain your safety and things you could do for fun?
Do for fun? Yeah. Well, anything physical at this point, I've learned you got to stretch. You got a big long stretch routine. You can't skimp on the stretching, because you're going to pay for that. You got to warm up. You got to stretch every muscle you can think of. Get the back and the front. But
okay.
Mostly video games, I think, are safe.
Wow.
So stick with that.
do you stretch for those too, or just it's one or the other?
I've hurt my thumb.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, on that note, we're already over time, because this is actually an absolute banger of a guest segment. We're going to be back with our longtime friend Pete Quinones right after this commercial break. Don't go away.
There exists a world that you can only reach between 2:20 and 2:30 a.m. Before you travel, I must advise you of a few rules. Rule number 1, no matter how inviting they seem, avoid the glowing doors. Stepping through one will scatter pieces of you across countless dimensions. Rule number 2, if a woman in a blue dress asks for directions, lie. She already knows the way. She's testing to see if you're trustworthy. Do not let her befriend you. Rule number 3, if you come across any mirrors, do not stare into them. If you do, your reflection will stay behind while you continue on, forever seeking you. Rule number 4, if you hear the faint and muffled sound of the song Funky Town approaching you, run. Lastly, above all else, trust your instincts. This place is a paradox, and logic has no place here. If something feels wrong, it is. I wish you the best of luck.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this evening is, of course, the host of the Pete Quinones show, which, Pete, I've actually got a blast from the past for you. I think you're our third longest running guest. Check this out. Pete, this is why I asked you if you could do this week. Almost 7 years to the day from episode 11 of The Gold Standard. There's Pete and I.
Oh, wow.
In simpler, happier times. When,
Yep. We're probably just talking about Game of Thrones or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in all fairness, you were calling yourself Mance, and I at the time, I was a big Game of Thrones fan because I just, I didn't know yet what horrors yet awaited us, both in terms of the show and in terms of never, ever, ever, ever reading the end of the books. But you're not going to trigger me into going to that. Pete Quinones, welcome back to the show.
Doing good, man. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I wanted to start off with, I've seen some of your really cool pictures on the internet. You guys just recently got back from a vacation. Where'd you guys go?
We went down to Bukeleville. We went to El Salvador. We were down there for 8 days and 7 nights, and stayed in San Salvador the whole time.
Yeah. So what was the motivation for El Salvador in particular? Did you just want to kind of get to check it out with your own eyes and everything going on in the news, or was it just genuinely an interesting vacation destination?
A little bit of both. It was mostly, well, we wanted to get out of we had talked about doing an international trip, and we were talking about Europe, and Europe is kind of,
sure,
depending on where you go, it's kind of sad. I mean, it's like, literally, if I want to do that, I can just go to like New York City and go to the Bronx or something like that. So, I was just like, well, let's stay within, their central time, just like us. So it's like, let's fly down there and see what happens, and see what it's like. And we had a great time. We stayed in like a boutique hotel that was still insanely cheap, much cheaper than here. Wasn't owned by Indians, which was just amazing for somebody who drives a lot and spends a lot of time in the freeway side hotels. It's like, wow, this place was not owned by Indians. Holy crap. Well, maybe some people could say like Native America, like Native America's Indians. There were some of those around, but it was really nice, and it's still inexpensive. And I could just say that it's probably felt safer, at night walking around than most big cities that I've ever been to. There's an armed presence. They have like a civil guard people with like openly carrying pistol grip shotguns all over the place. If you walk for a half mile, you'll see a few, and they have regular military carrying M16s. And I think it's really just a show of, FAFO right now, because most of their violent criminals are in jail, and they're never getting out. Well, so, imagine that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Now, I know you guys were there for basically just a little over a week, but you can't help but notice those things when you're out on the street. So let me just, I don't know if either of us really had a plan for tonight. I just figured we would just hang out and talk. But I think this is an interesting point, that I think when a lot of people see kind of what's just, when you're only getting kind of the drive-by 24-hour news version of what's gone on in El Salvador, people fall into the two camps of, oh, well, Bukele's doing a great job, he's cleaning up the streets, or, oh, Bukele's a tyrant, look at the way he's manhandling people. This is a loss of civil liberties. Did you get the feeling when you were there for that period of time that people were walking around the street in fear of their civil liberties, or did you get the feeling that people were grateful?
They were, we stayed right across the street from a mall, and like a couple of nights right outside the mall, there was literally like a party. It was like a street party, and I don't even know if it was planned. It almost seemed impromptu. I don't think that they were worried about getting arrested or anything like that. The only we went to the National Museum, and they had some art installations from the past couple of years, and you could tell that, like, it's typical shit lib kind of stuff. So I talked to, there was a guy there, there were a bunch of young people. And when I say young people, I'm talking about early 20s who could answer questions. They spoke English. And that's where you hear the shit lib kind of thing. You hear the kind of thing that you've heard from shit libs in this country. Oh, well, there were some people who were arrested who weren't, who weren't part of gangs and everything. They may have just only been friends with somebody in the gang. And, that's the kind of pushback you got. But, you're in an art museum. What would you expect? What would you expect of somebody working in an art museum? So it seemed like the people on the outside, and I just saw a video, I think it was yesterday, of Bukele was at a rally or something like that. And all these people were excited to see him, taking selfies with him. And they were all young. I mean, they were all in their 20s. So, yeah, I don't think they're worried about their civil liberties being violated. I think they're enjoying their liberty, but they also understand that, it came at a price. And I think they're very grateful for the price that was paid for that.
Well, if there's something I feel like I've noticed in recent months or years, even, it's that, even if you're looking at one specific demographic, like say young people ages 21 to early 20s, mid 20s, you're even with that, if you've, a lot of people I think, oh, well, young people are more liberal when they're younger. You're going to find a lot of progressives that are younger. When you're thinking of like protests on the street and throwing tomato juice on the paintings and blocking traffic, these are all young people. And I was like, well, there may be truth to that there's a high percentage of those types of people who are also young. But I think it's a big split between, because there's also a lot of young people in that age that get married and start families, right? But I think, in my opinion, and you can correct me if you've had a different point of view, but from my perspective, the young 23 to 28-ish-year-olds who are starting careers, getting married, and starting families are not the same young people that you're seeing gluing themselves to statues and adopting progressivism. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I would say that I'm mostly in a bubble when it comes to that. Most of the, I guess, what we would call the Zoomer generation that I deal with is pretty right wing, pretty based. Even when I go to like my visit my wife's family, they're like at the at holidays. There's a lot of kids there who are between like 19 and 25. They're not particularly progressive. They're probably more conservative leaning. But, one thing that they do have is they all have jobs. They're getting married. They're buying houses. And these aren't people who, they don't come from a rich family,
Sure.
So, maybe being in a huge city right now isn't the greatest thing if you're young, and people in a smaller town can find more opportunities, and they can network better through people, especially if as soon as they graduate high school they don't move half a country away to a really cool zip code so they can be in a cool place. They can sit around and they can stay in their area, network, and build something. And I think maybe we're getting back to that as far as a culture goes. Maybe we're getting back to a culture of people who are not going to be so excited about graduating high school and maybe graduating college and then moving to the big city or moving to a nice suburb zip code. Well, maybe I'll stay around my family and build here, because I think that, from what I see and from, the people that I know, I don't hear people complaining that there aren't opportunities out there.
Well, I kind of wonder if it can't just be simply the bees. And so maybe that goes a little ways towards explaining for that reverse. Maybe I'm supposed to seek knowledge and skills and then go apply them at home rather than go apply them for somewhere else in some cubicle in some place that's not my home. Would you say that makes sense?
Sure, and I think there's also power in that. I think the more you get, like, cities are just basically multicultural, multiracial, and there's no cohesion there.
Yeah.
When you stick around where you grew up, if that place is more rural, there'll be a tendency to be a more tight knit, more homogenous. And I think there's more power in homogeneity, especially even with political power. I think, if you have that, you don't have as many special interest groups vying for special privileges and everything and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that I've come recently to be when I've been for a while an opponent of multiculturalism and multiracialism in areas, in localities, and I think a lot of it has to do with politics. We see it in this country. Trump gets elected, and everybody's like, "Oh, we voted for him. He's for us." And then it's like, well, I mean, how many different his first term, let's see, well, he did things for Israel. He pandered to the black population. I mean, he didn't pardon Ross Ulbricht um, or Edward Snowden or Julian Assange, but he pardoned a bunch of rappers.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think leadership and political leadership in multicultural and multiracial societies have a tendency to have being pulled in different directions. So, the smaller area you can be in, the less of that a politician has to deal with. It's actually even easier to to govern, and it's easier to see as as somebody who's part of that homogeneity. It's easier for you, whether it be cultural, whether it be whatever it is, it's easier for you to not have your interests cut off at the knees by competing interest groups.
Well, before we move on completely from your El Salvador trip and talking about Bukele, I think a lot more Javier Milei in Argentina has gotten a lot more press, I think, at least domestically here, than Bukele has. And maybe it's because of the chainsaw stuff and just the attitude and his press and all that. But of those two, which one do you think in the long term is going to be seen as the bigger success for his country?
I think Bukele will, because I think the reason why a lot of Americans, and not only libertarian types, but a lot of Americans appeal, they look at Milei and they just see more liberalism. They see more classical liberalism. Oh, cutting taxes. Oh, this, oh, that. If he has done heavy-handed stuff, I remember there were a bunch of commies who were protesting in the street, and I don't know that he did what Bukele would do, or just round them up and throw them in jail.
Sure.
And so Americans can relate to that more, because it's like, oh, well, you need due process, and we have this history. Well, no, it doesn't work. And Milei is the problem I have with Milei is that what's going to happen when he's out of office? Are they going to elect another Milei? Because that's not the history of most societies. If they have great economic prosperity, they normally decide, and Sweden was like this at one point, where they were just like an open, free markets. And, well, why did a free market work in Sweden? Well, I mean, everybody's related. There's no competing, the competing interests are reduced. I think that if Milei is not setting up a successor, they talk about how, oh, Trump needs a successor here and everything, and that's going to be J.D. Vance. If Milei's not setting up a successor to come in there and continue what he's doing, then what happens when he gets out of there? They vote in the same old people. That's like, oh, well, we've had enough success. Now we have to take care of people who are poor, and we need to do more for the poor. That seems to be especially in Latin America, that seems to be something that happens. I mean, even happens in Northern European countries. But Bukele, I think Bukele is smart enough to know that if that country is going to succeed and it's going to become whatever his plan is for it, I'm hoping he's not trying to make it like Ireland, where, in the aughts, Ireland, like dropped their corporate taxes to nothing. And then, I was staying right around the corner from the gigantic Google building.
Sure.
And I was like, that's not a good sign, because when you look what happened to Ireland. I mean, Ireland, 25 years ago was a homogenous country of Catholics. Now it's basically being overrun. I mean, their prime minister is a gay Indian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what the hell? How does that happen?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Bukele, if he is trying to make it a tourist destination, or if he's trying to make it a place where companies can open up, have headquarters, Central American headquarters or whatever, that he doesn't forget about the culture, and he doesn't, and he has somebody set up to come in and replace him that has the same kind of attitude he does. And I think there's a better chance of that with him, considering El Salvador was in a much worse situation than Argentina. I know the libertarian types, because I used to be one, will look and go, well, no, Argentina was much worse, because Argentina, their economics. I mean, like literally like 1% of the El Salvadorian population was being murdered every year.
Wow.
So it's like, I mean, I think that's a bigger problem than, we had inflation. Inflation bad. That destroys. Inflation is what destroys empires. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like murder. Let's not talk about murder.
Yeah.
So he stopped murder. He stopped it from being the murder capital of the world and took it to being the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And I think people are going to probably want to keep that. That's going to be something that's going to be a little more important to the next generation, I hope, than we need to keep inflation down, because, if line don't go up, line needs to go up. If line no go up, it no good. We don't have no civilization if line no go up.
Well, you mentioned, of course, the big T word, Trump. Let me ask you about that. So, I always remember, and again, maybe this is just kind of an impression of, social media or just media in general, but in some of the elections around the world, whether it's Bukele or Milei or that broad in Italy, I always forget her name. But in some of these different, political movements, people like to say, oh, well, this is inspired by Trump. All of these different peoples around the world are seeing what MAGA has done and seeing the Trump movement in America, and all these different political movements around the world inspired by Trump. But not only do I not necessarily believe that, but I tend to think, just in the guys we've talked about so far, when you're comparing El Salvador, Argentina, and the United States, which of course are very different places, so it's not so much comparing the nations so much as just comparing, the leaders of those nations. Is it really that those guys are inspired by Trump, or is it actually more that Trump has largely failed to be quite as transformational as those guys have been, the other way around?
I would say the reason why you see people like Bukele, Milei, Orban in Hungary, you see the rise of the AfD party in Germany, and you see movements like that, and Trump, is because people are just sick of this post-war consensus bull. And I think it's pretty obvious that it's very important, the post-war consensus of, oh, we're just liberals and we get to live. It's a multicultural culture land. I remember Barbara Lerner Specter, an American Jew who went over to Sweden with her Madeira NGO, and said, what, 15 years ago, that, Europe is not going to survive unless it becomes multicultural. And we're going to be blamed for that. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I think people are sick of this. I think the reason you see all of this is because it's unsustainable. And when you see someone like Darryl Cooper and being called a Nazi because he went on Tucker and then he went on Joe Rogan and he said things that were in the 1950s, you could argue that Churchill was, a bum. And people would say that Churchill was a drunk. Everyone knew that. Churchill was in debt and was basically the slave of whoever would pay off his debts. Everyone knew that. And you see the way people are reacting to it, and you see that there are people on both sides fighting that completely agree that the post-war consensus needs to be destroyed. And then you see people who are fighting tooth and nail, and they're calling Darryl Cooper a Nazi and a Nazi apologist because he said, because he says things like, maybe that war didn't need to be fought. Maybe the United States didn't need to get involved. And, maybe Russia was planning to invade the European continent, like Viktor Suvorov said in the book Icebreaker. Lays out an incredible argument for. I think that's what you're seeing. And I think that's just what they call the spirit of the age. Is the spirit of the age we're in is this post-war consensus that, no one can be too right-wing. We can have people who are openly communist. Like literally call themselves communist, Marxist, Leninists, and they can work in the government. But if somebody calls themselves a national socialist, well, they can't even have a bank account.
Sure.
That's the post-war consensus. Being too, it's my people. I care about my people, and I care about my people enough that if you try and hurt my people, and if you have been hurting my people, I will kick you out of this country. I will demonize you and kick you out of this country, kick you out of our country. That's the worst thing possible, to care about your own people. That's the third rail. Saying that you have, not everyone, Europeans saying that they care about other European people and that they have something in common and they have interests. And I think that that's what you're seeing. I think that's part of what's happening with Trump. I think Trump is much more complicated. The reason for his rise is much more complicated than Milei in Argentina, which is a mostly Spanish country, and in El Salvador, which is, almost universally El Salvadorian, monocultural societies. This country is much different. The problems we have here run a lot deeper than in those places. So, I don't even see Trump as an answer. I see Trump as a sign.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can get some things done that will actually help help the average person, but I don't see him curing our ills, any problems that we have. There are way too many special interests, elite groups, and too many groups with money, who can pull his strings and move him in one direction and the other. So to me, it's always been, and I know it's kind of a trope, but Trump is just really a signal, but he's not the answer.
Well, I think, to call out the elephant in the room, there was a few things I had in my notes I wanted to make sure we touch on before we get too far out of time. I know that as we speak, they're allegedly getting ready to do this massive dump of JFK files, which I don't know how anyone could be excited for that when you see the way the whole Epstein thing went down, when you see all those grifters walking out of the White House with their binders filled with nothing, like with absolutely no information whatsoever. And of course, also this same week, you and I had spoke briefly earlier in the week that, we'll be lucky if we get to do this show and we're not at war with Iran by the time you and I sit down to talk, because we're bombing Yemen because supposedly we're protecting shipping from all these horrible pirates. And then, of course, just this past week with the CR, there was the whole big showdown between Trump and Massey, Thomas Massey from Kentucky. And, to call out the elephant in the room, there's a little bit of a link between all of those individual things, and harkening back to, well, what's one major difference between kind of Trump and America versus a lot of these other examples you've given? It's that it's a link to this funny little nation over in the Middle East. I know where I'm going with that. I think at the end of the day, we all knew going in. You had already mentioned a short list of things that Trump had promised in the first that didn't work out in the Trump 1.0, that people then had hopes that Trump 2.0 would be better. And there have been some good things in Trump 2.0. You mentioned Ross wasn't pardoned in the first one. He was pardoned in this one, just as one example. But we all knew going in that if things could get better domestically, then great. But the huge red flag would always be the Adelsons and Trump's connections with Israel. And now, here we are, 8 weeks into the new administration, we're now starting to see that red flag take center stage.
Well, I mean, we knew it was there.
Yeah.
And also, the J6 prisoners being pardoned.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's huge.
Yes.
Because I mean, as Darryl Cooper has said, he said it wasn't an insurrection, but he wishes it would have been.
Sure.
And that they would have done something, because this country proved just how lost it is, and maybe lost forever, because Jeffrey Epstein was killed in a jail cell, and there wasn't a revolution because of it.
Yeah.
That should have been the last straw. Mm-hmm. And, are we going to see Epstein file? Yeah. Are we going to see the JFK files? I don't think we're going to see them all.
No.
I think we're going to see, I mean, maybe the only thing that makes me think maybe they do is because Glenn Beck is playing damage control already. It's not about the who did it. It's about the why and what happened. So, and anybody who knows anything about Glenn Beck and some of the absolutely insane things he said after October 7th, 2023, maybe he knows something. Maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But I mean, I just don't know what to expect from this, because, our greatest ally is implicated with Epstein. Our greatest ally is going to be implicated with, is going to be mentioned in the JFK files. I've heard from people who've seen them that they know this, that this is, I know people who know who the shooter was, like they know the names of the people who pulled the trigger. These things are not secret. They have been leaked before, but they were cleaned up very quickly. I mean, this all points to Israel, and I don't even know that it matters. I think we're at such a point where, like, boomers and a lot of unfortunate early Gen Xers, it could come out that Israel was responsible for killing the president of the United States, or at least help plan it, and that they were blackmailing Americans into committing treason by orchestrating them having sex with children. And I think a lot of people won't even care. I mean, sure, we see I can run down a whole list I have in my head of people who belong in jail right now. The clearest some of them, Adam Kinzinger, mm-hmm. and a bunch of these people, they should be in Gitmo. I mean, really, they should be getting the Rosenberg treatment. But I just don't see this happening. I don't see, and I'm not one of these people who, the whole Miriam Adelson giving $100 million and everything like that, that's not even necessary. Yeah, I remember talking to Jeremy R. Hammond, and he wrote a book called Obstacle to Peace about Israel Palestine. And he said, you don't even need AIPAC. Christian evangelicals in this country are so brainwashed into thinking, oh, greatest ally and boomers and they're our greatest ally. It's like, why would the Houthis attack our shipping? Oh, I don't know. Maybe there was this proxy war where the United States completely armed and gave bombers and jets and fighter planes to Saudi Arabia, taught them how to target, and went in and like destroyed Yemen to the point where like cholera, something they hadn't seen in 50 to 60 years, came back, and they were targeting infrastructure like hospitals and water treatment plants. I mean, maybe we've forgotten about that. They haven't. I haven't. If the first thing Trump should have done, one of the first things he should have done was he should have sent a delegation to friggin' Yemen and said, look, things have been, sorry we did all this. What do we need to do? How do we make it so that we can have commerce through these straits again? Mm-hmm. What do you need? I mean, payback. It's like, oh, they're why would they attack? It's like, first of all, as far as I understand, they've never attacked an American commercial ship. Now, I know a lot of ships have different ports of call and everything, or they're registered in other countries because of the Jones Act and everything. That's neither here nor there. But why would they attack the American military ships? Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe this thing called, the Saudis just destroying them and the United States telling them how to do it. I mean, the people who instinctively jump to our greatest ally, they don't realize that, I mean, literally, since World War II, we've been controlled, and even before World War II. Basically, look at Biden's cabinet. Was it 60 to 80% of it had, I don't know, names that sound like names that you might find in Israel?
Sure, yeah.
The Secretary of State, after October 7th, went to Jerusalem, went into the Knesset and said, I'm here as a Jew. Not I'm here as the American Secretary of State. I'm here as a Jew. Yeah, I mean, let's get into conspiracy theory land. We've been an occupied government by a foreign power for a very long time, and all Israel is a land-based aircraft carrier in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is. And what does that bring us? Attacks, hatred, because why? What would an American, if you believe in the founding of this country, if you're all we need to do is go back to the Constitution. All we need to do is go back to the Articles of Confederation. Well, yeah, what did those people say? No binding alliances.
Sure.
And people say, oh, talking about this is so low IQ. Really? So Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh, Martin Luther, Thomas Aquinas, people throughout the 20th century, these were low IQ people. Oh, and we're not supposed to look to them and see what they wrote? Or how about I just study their own history and read their own books? Jewish Virtual Encyclopedia is online. It's one of my favorite resources. I have access to the older ones too. I'm reading I'm up to episode 19 with a Russian scholar of reading 200 Years Together by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which is the history of the history of the Jews in Russia from 1795 to 1995. I'm studying. I'm looking at the history, and I'm seeing this happens over and over and over again. You can't let this little country control us. And then there are these people who are like, well, actually, we control them. Okay, run with that. We've been under occupation for 80 years, so we control them. Great. Same thing. It's reciprocal. And then you have the City of London. It's this big triangle. It's all the same thing. It's all controlled by the same people. So what do we do? Well, Putin doesn't have this problem. They're in Russia. They don't have control there. Well, why? Because he doesn't fucking let them.
Yeah.
When he was elected in the 90s, there were these oligarchs in the country who were divvying up the country to the point where the average lifespan of a Russian male had been reduced 20 years. And he chased them out. And he drove them out. And the ones he didn't drive out, he put under his heel and made them work for them. Well, where did they escape to? New York City, London, Tel Aviv. Okay. Kiev. Okay. So there's the elephant. You want to talk about the elephant in the room? There's the elephant in the room. I just laid it out for you. Now go ahead and call me low IQ because you don't want to have a conversation with me. Because I know this. I'm going to give you dates and I'm going to give you names and I'm going to give you treaties and I'm going to give you the history that you don't know. Because you're just like, I have to judge everybody as an individual because no groups ever come together and organize in their own self-interest, right? Libertarians.
This has given me too many follow-up questions in one spiel. So I'm gonna try to remember a few of them. So I was reminded as you were saying, because you had mentioned, kind of that people, that if there were these revelations, if some things did come out, that you feel like people just wouldn't care. Because look at the things that people know now. Like we've all seen the graphics of, here's 3/4 of some of the most powerful and influential American politicians, and all the ones that have dual citizenship with Israel, which is, I think one is one too many, but it's a lot. And then you think it's just some of the other just run of the mill grift, right? Like you think of, when the Nancy Pelosi's and Elizabeth Warrens of the world go into politics making, $100,000 a year, and then after 20 years they have a couple $100 million. Everyone knows that, right? Like we all know that they're robbing people blind and doing insider trading and accepting bribes and all that. And of course, there's one that I always love to mention. There's the Congress literally has a fund set aside just to settle all the sexual impropriety cases with congressmen and senators. So these people just rape and abuse with impunity, and the government just pays their tab. Again, so I'm just simply listing things like
just end the state, bro. All you gotta do is end the state, bro, and that's not going to happen anymore. Just end the state, bro.
So all of these things are things that people know. Like this is all common. You can Google any of those things and see that it's true in 15 seconds. But yet all those people get reelected, though, right? So the public at large knows these things, and yet incumbents win 92% of their races or some ridiculous number like that. So that they do those things, and yet you reelect them. But you also mentioned, I know you brought up Russia and Putin, and that he doesn't have some of these same specific issues that a Trump has, or even maybe a Milei has. But you also mentioned that, who's Trump's successor going to be? Is it going to be J.D. Vance? Is that going to be MAGA 2.0, or is that going to be something different? And I don't know if we even have time to go into that. You're wondering is Bukele going to have a successor? Does Putin have a successor? Is there someone coming? If Putin had a heart attack and died today, who's taking over Russia?
I think there's a better chance of Putin having a successor who will continue his legacy of, basically telling the West to go screw themselves, because that's just basically their culture. Their culture is we're Russians. I think Russians know their history. Like I said, I'm reading this book, 200 Years Together, that Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote. It's the book that Jordan Peterson won't talk about. And there's a reason why it hasn't been officially translated into English yet. I think they know their history. I think they know that if they allow people who are not Russian to take over or come in and have influence, they lose who they are as Russians. And they're already succumbing to that. I mean, it's hard to keep the West out. But I think there's a better chance of that happening with Putin. I mean, look at Putin. Putin has, I'm sure you've probably seen interviews with Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister. He's probably the greatest statesman in the world. I mean, no, hands down. He's knows how to negotiate. Has only Russia's interest when he talks, and he is somebody who, when he comes into a room, he commands it. And you know that he's a serious person. See, this is the reason why I think a lot of people don't like Putin and don't like Lavrov and didn't even like Medvedev. These are serious people. Yes, have they had people killed? Probably, most likely. So have we. So have our leaders. Our leaders have killed millions just for interests, for commerce, for minerals, for ethnic animosities that go back centuries by certain groups that have taken over influence in this government. But I think that they genuinely are serious people. I mean, Crenshaw. He's literally a comic book villain. He has a friggin' eye patch.
Yeah.
How do you take that seriously? How do you take Nancy Pelosi seriously? I mean, she's a doddering old fool and drunk half the time. How do you take any of these people seriously? Our president literally used to run a reality show. The president of Ukraine was on TV as the president of Ukraine. Like, he literally became the character that he was on TV with the same friggin' path. And then you look and you're like, how did Putin, well, Putin was former KGB, St. Petersburg unit, probably East Berlin as well. You look at Lavrov, these are people who, they're serious people who care, who I don't think they can be bought off by foreign powers. I think they would probably catch a bullet if they were bought off by foreign powers. So, I mean, is Putin going to have, this goes back to, is Putin going to have a successor? Probably. I don't know who that is yet. I haven't looked into it enough. I actually know some Russian experts that probably could have a good opinion on that. But ever since this whole thing started in February of 2022, and I mean, the history of Ukraine started in February 2022. Don't let anybody try and tell you anything happened before that. People have been saying, "Oh, Putin has, cerebral palsy." I mean, like all this. I don't know. He seems to be doing pretty good. Sure, yeah, he's an old guy, but I mean, I wouldn't want to mess with him. I think maybe they look at him as somebody who they're like jealous of, kind of deep in their subconscious, because he's actually like working for his own country. Are there going to be interests that he has that sure. Yeah, that's any politician is going to have that. There'll be outside interests that, but I mean, we know that everything is bought and paid for. We can look and see that, AIPAC owns Don Bacon out of Nebraska. A guy you've never heard of, a congressman you've never heard of, is taking $1.3 million from AIPAC. Mm-hmm. We know that from Thomas Massey that everybody in Congress has an AIPAC babysitter. We know that even people who haven't taken, they're taking money from, from some kind of special interest that they're going to work for. I remember Terry McAuliffe was the head of the DNC. I think he stepped down in like 2004. And he was big into E85 fuel, corn. And it's crazy when he stepped down and like was no longer in office, he was like appointed to the board of like all these agricultural companies. It's just, I mean, how does that happen? I don't know. I just think that we're just not a serious country, and we're just an open air strip mall, and yeah, and basically an open air auction house where everything gets auctioned off to the highest bidder. And then people look at something like Russia and they're like, well, yeah, that happens, but not on the scale here. And I just think they're jealous. And they're like, and they're also, I mean, Putin has way more self-control than I would. If I was president of Russia, I would have invaded Ukraine in 2014. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. I mean, he allowed anywhere from 12,000 to 30,000 of his own of ethnic Russians to be killed in Ukraine by that. The same, if you really know your Ukraine politics, it's the same people who control this government. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, who pushed a war? Victoria Nuland, Robert Kagan, Alexander Vindman. Where are they all from? Oh, Ukraine. All their families come from Ukraine, historically. Crazy. Oh, that's wild. You think that maybe this is ethnic animosity for a pogrom that happened in 1648? Which really wasn't a pogrom. It was a bunch of Jews who rose up and started killing people because they thought their Messiah was coming. And the Cossack Khmelnytsky had to put together a group to stop these people. But, oh, we got pogromed. Yeah, you're murdering people. Okay. That's you want to know the Ukraine war? You want to know why Victoria Nuland and Vindman and all these people are, like hate Russia and don't mind seeing a million Ukrainians die and 200,000 or how many ever Russians die, and they don't mind seeing Christians kill each other?
I think
maybe they wanted it that way.
I think that last point right there is the one that really gets me. I've never claimed to be a deeply religious person, but I continue to be blown away at all over the world, whether it's Eastern Europe, where the Middle East, obviously, it's also happened in South America, it's happened in Europe, where lots of places where interests within the U.S. direct foreign policy to affect or destabilize regions, and the effect always just so happens to be a bunch of dead Christians, and it's hang the banners, mission accomplished. How can a Christian population in the United States stomach that time and time and time again?
They're ignorant. They're you're familiar with the term eschatology?
Yes,
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And study of the end times. Yeah, they've been convinced that this group that has taken over and basically taken this piece of land hostage in the Middle East has something to do with Jesus coming back. That's as simple as I can put it.
And that's it.
That representative, Don Bacon, on Twitter, he was going off about how we need to do anything we can to support Israel. And I said, Don, and I tweeted this at him, and I can't believe he responded to me. I said, Don, one of these countries has to disappear. Choose. A, the United States. B, Israel. Pick one. And his answer to me was, read the book of Revelation.
I saw that, yeah.
Well, first of all, it's the book of Revelation. So I don't even believe this guy believes. I think it's all money to him. Like I said, 1.3 million from AIPAC. I don't even know that he's a Christian or believes anything. But yeah, he basically said, he admitted to me and to the world on Twitter that he would rather see the United States destroyed than Israel. And he is an elected official here.
Yeah, he's not just some random crank. He's a U.S. representative. Yeah.
Yeah, he is a U.S. representative to Nebraska who sits in Congress in Washington, D.C., not a state representative, national representative. Mm-hmm. There's how are you supposed to take these people seriously? How do you take is that America first? I mean, is America first bombing Yemen when we can, and and supporting Israel when they're just basically dropping bombs on neighborhoods, and then they say, "Oh, well, we may have killed 800 babies today, but every one of those babies had a terrorist hiding behind it." Okay, I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't believe you. Oh, well, you're un-American. I'm un-American because I don't believe people from another country, because I don't support another country outside of America. I only support America. That's it. I don't care about Israel. I want Israel to exist because I want these people to have some place to go. If they love Israel so much, go there. Go live there. I'm willing to kill everyone around you as long as you all leave. Just go back. If you are somebody who supports Israel, Jewish or not, go there. Go there. If you're willing to make excuses for, just dropping bombs on residential buildings, like they were doing in Beirut. In Lebanon. I think it was Beirut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then, go there. Go there. You're not an American. I'm sorry. You're just not. And if that means the president is an American, so be it. I don't consider anybody who has loyalty to another country to the point where they're going to excuse what they're doing there, and they're going to make it so that if you speak out against it, you have the possibility of getting arrested and thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fuck that. Really, fuck that, and fuck you. If that's your attitude, really, say that shit to my face. Say, really, I would love for you to do that. Come say that shit to my face. I appear in public enough. You people, you fucking disgust me. Beyond disgust. How the fuck do you call yourself an American? You're not an American. Freaking Thomas Jefferson would have freaking executed you on the White House lawn.
Of course, without a doubt, obviously I agree, because I'm to the level of when people ask me these questions, I tell them that, well, you have to understand, I'm coming from the viewpoint of, I still live in my country that's under occupation by a foreign government. And I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about the U.S. federal government, because my nation broke away from them, and now we're under foreign occupation. So we've been under foreign occupation for going on a couple hundred years. So Pete, you've done it again. I feel like I could talk to you for hours more about a lot of other topics, but we're already 24 minutes over time. So
it happens.
Well, we'll do it again. Pete,
I get going. You're not going to stop me.
Where can people go to check out more of your content and support you?
The Pete Quinones Show, all podcatchers, still on YouTube, not monetized, of course. I think they keep me on YouTube just so that it sort of discredits me, because so many people have been kicked off of YouTube. It's like, let's keep him on there because it discredits him. But I'm also on Rumble and Odyssey, and I have a Substack, PeteSubstack.com, and the Old Glory Club. It's a bunch of us who care about the founding of America and what it was founded for, and we came together to promote that and to help other people, educate other people on just exactly what that means, and for the future of organizing, especially on the local level, because I think that's what the future of this country is. If you want liberty and you want freedom, you're going to have to do it in a locale, and you're going to have to make your stand from there.
Think local, like local. I've heard that somewhere. Well, on that note, Pete, I appreciate it, buddy. It's always a great time.
Thank you, Alan.
Guys, we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Enjoy. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you get us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. Thanks to Spotify, It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. And don't forget to get your tickets to the 7th annual It's Too Late live show, coming to you Saturday, May 17th in beautiful Columbia, Tennessee.
Woo!
Yeah, right? That's a marathon right there. Dave, do you have a final thought?
Yeah, that was long. Good though. Great interview. Good show. Had fun.
Yeah. Man, but no after party tonight though, because
we're exhausted.
Yeah, tired. Got a lot of work left to do. I'm going to work tomorrow, and when I get off work, I'm driving to Florida.
Yeah.
Just
want to be awake for that.
I mean, if I can get in a few snoozes down I-65, I will, but
it's a pretty straight ride, right?
Yeah, for the most part. It's been some years since I've made the trek down there. You know, when I was in my like mid-20s, when I was going down there for, man, it was nothing. Man, I was cruising. These days, it's like, ugh.
You didn't need some brakes.
Yeah, you need something. Guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. I've been a zombie all week. I need some sleep.
Yeah? I don't know. Somebody told me today that getting enough sleep is a feminine trait.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Is that true, chat? A big gulp of chicken fajita nachos for the road, says Celeste.
Oh, there you
Jesus.
Go. Oh yeah, just pack them into like a styrofoam cup.
My
Stick them in your
goodness.
center console.
Oh man.